Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. Last week we had the chance to get on the road down to Nashville, Tennessee for NCBA's annual Cattle Con. We spoke with lots of smiling cattle producers after this roller coaster of a year, learned a little bit more about stockmanship from Kirk Pate and Ron Gill, and talked a lot about the size of the cattle herd here in the United States of America. The organization also heard a presentation by Randy Block, CEO of CattleFacts, and we spoke with him to get the details on what the data from 2025 showed and what might be ahead for the market in 2026.
Well, you look at what we've gone through in 2025, and 2025 was the most profitable year in the history of the industry for all segments, producers in every segment. You just don't see the stars align like that very often. So I'm so happy for so many of our producers that have struggled for decades, and to finally catch one of these that they get a good payday.
As you look forward, Randy, are we going to start to see this cattle herd in the U.S. rebuild in 2026, or is that further away?
Well, we think we're really in the early stages of it. We actually think that maybe we're just a little bit further through starting into it than maybe what the USDA numbers are, but again, it really doesn't matter. We're still just at the trough area in here, and the markets are just starting to see a little more heifer retention take place. We are expanding from the dairy side, and obviously from a dairy standpoint, we're using more and more of those offspring calves in our supplies. And the replacement heifer numbers suggested we're in the early stages of expansion there. So there were several places in the USDA report that hinted that we're at the trough and we'll start to see a rebuild, but it's going to be a long, slow rebuild. I don't think any doubt about it.
You mentioned the beef on dairy influence. We've really seen that kind of come into its own in 2025. Is there more room for the dairy industry to provide more beef calves going forward?
Well, I think there is. I mean, we're just utilizing a higher percentage of those offspring calves that aren't needed to go back into the dairy heifer replacement herd. So I think it's been a win-win for all industries, for the beef industry, for the dairy industry, and I think we'll continue to find more and more ways that we can utilize more of those cattle. You know, if you think about the cattle cycle, since the highs in 1970, the beef cow herd, as we've rebuilt every time, has been at a lower high than what the previous cycle. So with beef demand at a 40-year high, we've got to continue to use innovation to come up with ways to be able to supply that consumer demand.
One of the ways I know the industry has innovated in a sense is through genetics. We've got carcasses that can just carry more pounds of beef across the finish line. Can we keep putting pounds on these steers, Randy?
Well, I think this has been interesting. I mean, I don't think any of us really thought that the genetic potential was as great as it is in these animals we're producing today, but what our seed stock producers are doing out there and the tools that they're giving in these cattle that we have today and with their nutrition programs. You know, I had shared with the audience that in 2024 weights were up 27 pounds. That was the equivalent of harvesting another 1 million head of cattle that year. In 2025, weights were up 25 pounds. That was the equivalent of harvesting another 900,000 head of cattle for the year. Weights are off and running. Looks like we're going to be up another 12, 15 pounds this year. So we have to be careful as an industry. We don't want to go too far, but right now that's the only way we can get these cattle relatively close to a break even with the cost of feeder cattle.
That was Randy Block, CEO of the cattle industry data firm CattleFacts. Fight grease, dust, and contaminants on your equipment with a Hotsy pressure washer. Visit Hotsy.com to find a local dealer, and remember, nothing cleans like a Hotsy. Now it's time to turn our focus to the markets. Joining us this week is Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing in Britain, South Dakota. And Dwayne, we saw some excitement move into the soybean market midweek. Fill us in on what the president kicked off.
Well, yeah, interesting day. All of a sudden the soybean market takes off, right? President Trump posted on social media that he and President Xi from China had a phone conversation. And within all that post, he said that they're considering buying 20 million metric ton of our old crop beans. Now, remember, we think they've already bought 12 million metric tons, so it's only 8 million metric ton more. But that would be a complete game changer if they would, because this is the time of year where China usually shifts all their purchases to Brazil, who is quite a bit cheaper than us. So just that post sent the market flying higher and me scattering in my office here.
So, Dwayne, as you started digging into that post a little bit more, is there any indication that China might need to buy 8 million more tons from us? Are they looking at troubles in Brazil?
No, that's the problem with this tweet and the market rallying is I think everyone looks at it and goes, well, economically, they shouldn't do that. We're about $1 higher than Brazil before the rally. When you look at the FOB prices and if they would actually buy from us instead of Brazil, today's market, it would cost them around $400 million more to buy these beans from us than Brazil. So it would have to be either government buying for government storage. And remember, that's what they've done to buy the 12 million metric ton from us. Now they've auctioned off 2 million metric ton from their reserve, but boy, Mike, I actually even question if they have enough storage to do this. So I think it's a nice story from now. I really need to see the sales to see if it follows through.
But even in the absence of further confirmation, we did see that soybean market rally 40, 50 cents on the day the tweet was named. Does it present a selling opportunity for American growers, Dwayne?
Well, I think it does for farmers, especially, especially looking at new crop, or if you have old crop left, which sadly a lot of us don't. But I think this is a selling opportunity. And I'm not saying the market can't go flying higher, because what I haven't mentioned yet is the funds. They actually were almost flat soybeans last week, so they have a ton of buying power. And the volume was record high after this Trump social media post. So if the funds want to buy it and push us to $12, they have the power to do that. Little me selling the market isn't going to offset them enough, but I think it's a selling opportunity for farmers, yes.
Do you have a price target for growers looking at their new crop beans, Dwayne?
Yeah, I like new crop sales here, stair step them up from, really $11 to $12 is nice. Some people aren't making money at this number. I know every marketing plan is totally different, right? But I think we got to realize and remember that world stocks didn't change this week. World stocks are still record high. Brazil's going to raise a crop 10 million metric ton larger than last year's record. So that's where, the action and fireworks are fun, but farmers got to step back and kind of be smart about this.
Now, following that tweet, following the action in the soybeans, Dwayne, I don't believe we saw similar action in either corn or wheat. Any stories of note in either of those markets?
Not really. It's kind of weird. My commentary lately has all been about soybeans and cattle, and I'm not talking corn at all, because corn has been very range bound ever since the bearish USDA report. And I think the story is the same. You get above 430, you'll see farmers selling. On the wheat side of things, I think the most bullish thing I have is that the funds are near record short, and they might want to get out of positions because $5 seems to be good support. So a short covering rally is about all we can get out of wheat right now.
All right, we'll be watching that in the wheat market. But Dwayne, we are excited to pick your brain about the cattle markets. And when we come back, we'll dig in deep to what's happening on protein with Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing in South Dakota. Fight grease, dust, and contaminants on your equipment with a Hotsy pressure washer. Visit Hotsy.com to find a local dealer, and remember, nothing cleans like a Hotsy. We're talking about the commodity markets this week with Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing. Dwayne, I was down in Nashville for CattleCon this week, heard lots of enthusiasm about the cattle market, lots of optimism as we look out to 2026. Is that optimism you share?
No, I think it's justified. I mean, they should be optimistic. And when I look at the markets, we have all the potential to go back up and reach those record highs from last year and maybe even go beyond that. Box beef is high, inventory numbers low, cash keeps grinding higher. So no, they should be optimistic. Really, when it comes to cattle, the only thing I'm worried about is how bullish everyone is. And that sounds silly, but that's kind of how these markets go. When everyone's the most bullish, maybe you should be a little bit worrisome.
Well, let's talk about the market in a little more detail. Dwayne, feeder cattle off the front. We do still have that continued ban on imports in from Mexico that's supporting values here in this country. Feeders, as we get deeper into spring, what are you watching for some levels here to put some price protection in place?
I'm still watching the cash market. I think this is all driven by the cash market. The rally we had this week was just catching up to where the cash market is. I'm in the northern plains where feeder cattle cash is unbelievably hot and high, and it just seems to keep growing. a lot of that stems from the January bearish report with corn. I mean, we had producers say, I'm not selling corn for that price. So now they want to buy feeder cattle and feed them too. So I'm watching the cash markets to see, but once we make those, if we make those new all-time highs again, Mike, I am going to be talking about hedging again, or at least putting some sort of protection underneath this market. It makes me nervous.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And of course, when we calve in this country, we calve in the spring generally, or we calve in the fall. We are a long way from the fall right now. Dwayne, are you advising any risk management for those producers looking maybe 9 months down the road to those calves that could hit the ground?
Yeah, last couple of years we sold a lot of LRP, which is, putting a floor underneath it through insurance agents. And I still like doing that. Now, did we pay out a lot the last couple of years? No, because the price kept going higher. But I think what I'll encourage producers, remember, when you buy like a put option or LRP, you hope it's a waste of money. But you can go out to next January now and buy some LRP. Yes, it's going to look expensive, but that's because of the time. Like you mentioned, I mean, look at the markets this week, how much they change. So someone's got to sell that to you. So I like buying LRP. Just put that floor out there for the next year. And, if it's a waste of money, I will be happy again at CattleCon, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk fat cattle here. You mentioned there's a lot of optimism. We're seeing consumer demand stay strong. Again, Dwayne, what are you watching for timing here to see this market regain its mojo from last fall?
I think this demand stays very strong. I think it kind of stems to some of the things that are good the administration is doing. They want low fuel prices, low crude oil prices. And I know chasing kids around to sporting events all winter, I appreciate that. So if we can keep those consumer prices down, maybe we still keep demand very strong, box beef high. It's been amazing, this rally, that we haven't had more people back off like steaks and that. I guess we found out the U.S. economy is better than we thought. Some people go out and they're going to buy that steak on a Friday, a Saturday night, no matter what the price is. And next time I hang out with you, I'll let you buy me a steak too.
And I will. Let's do anything we can to support this market here at these prices. Dwayne, for producers, feedlots in particular, that are sitting on a lot of risk in 2026, how are you managing that hedge for these fat cattle?
There's a lot of ways to do it. I guess I look towards the LRP right away first because it's heavily subsidized and you don't have to pay till the end. But, just your standard marketing things that we've always had, put options, fence strategies, selling the board. I mean, we've got some guys that have sold the board and, there's margin calls involved with that. But if you get up to these highs, Mike, if you can just stomach that and say, I'm happy with this price, just selling the board is just fine.
All right. Dwayne Bussey, Bolt Marketing, thanks so much for joining us this week with your insights on these wild commodity markets.
Thanks for having me.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, Greg, it's been cold and it's been busy for a lot of folks across the country. How do things look as we get into next week?
Mike, boy, it's been a stormy spell of weather, to say the least, across a wide area of the country, with the exception of areas along the divide and westward. But that may be changing, at least signs of a pattern shift getting going as the week wears on. Milder air spilling across Big Sky country into the northern and central plain states. We'll get some snow melt underway there, or at least thaw-free cycles. Not much organized moisture with this particular front, but we will begin to ease temperatures down. They've been at or even better than record-setting levels in some areas, and a lot of mornings featuring air stagnation, freezing fog, and all that, so the atmosphere beginning to move now early on into the week in the Pacific Northwest, with temperatures still above average. The jet stream winds will buckle into northern California, right up towards Yellowstone, and continue their way through the Canadian prairie. So we're going to put an end to the Arctic air intrusions and begin to pick up moisture, kind of a rain-snow mix. No major systems, but a sloppy go of it in the feedlots, and some welcome moisture into northern California, the Pacific Northwest. Unfortunately, the snow levels will be relatively high, and the peaks are certainly not very bountiful with significant snow so far into this wintertime season as we roll the calendar into the month of February. A cool off expected as well across the southwestern states. Frontal boundary number 1, maybe a stray shower there. Will be kind of a weak low across the desert southwest. Warming winds across a wide area of the plains, and some rain in the forecast for parts of central and southern sections of the winter wheat belt. It'll be an upper air weather system that rides in out of the Pacific, sets up shop across the desert southwest, and some rain, a little snow in the higher peaks of the southern Rockies, and as you move into the Plain States area, it's primarily outbreaks of rain shower activity. So a pretty substantial pattern shift. It's not a major stormy weather setup, but a change to milder days underway from the divide on eastward and a little more moisture across the west. That Sierra range only about 40% of normal with regard to snowpack, and runoff issues are going to be mounting already as we move through the springtime season. A milder go of it with snow and perhaps some rain mixed on in as well, and at least thaw-free cycles setting up over a wide area of the Corn Belt. Cold Arctic air, but north of the border, seasonal temperatures across the northern plains and another weather system across the divide, and that will begin to slide its way into the plains with that system out of California riding up into the plains and across the Corn Belt locales. Maybe a sloppy go of it. Keep an eye on those bin and barred walls, footing issues for man and beast. Yeah, a little precarious, but some moisture in the form of some rain, a little wet snow as well, but a far better field of outdoor endeavors anticipated with a nice recovery on temperatures over the middle and late portions of the week over a wide area of the Corn Belt. Still some cleanup, recovery, the power grid, the whole 9 yards from the recent spat of winter storminess across the Tennessee Valley, northern Delta, with a milder go of it for those crews, and some rain in the forecast for parts of Oklahoma and Texas, even into the desert southwestern reaches, and that moisture plume begins to work on up. Jet stream winds buckle across the southern plains, will be riding to the north and northeast, some wide and expanding areas of rain, even a couple of thunderstorms down through Texas, warmth across the Delta region, and points out of the east with a cool off and temperatures across the southwestern mountains, some snow on the peaks out there with time. Meanwhile, across the Corn Belt locales coming off the barbaric cold, the rounds of winter storminess, including the northeastern New England, with that still into play here. Here across the central and southern Corn Belt, a better field of outdoor endeavors, sloppy footing, snow melt, thaw-free cycles, drip off the gutter line, but no real major winter storms or Arctic air intrusions expected. The cold air shunted up towards the Sioux, St. Lawrence River Valley, a rain snow mix into the northeast and New England, some rain shower activity mid-Atlantic region with snow melt still ongoing there across the peaks of the Appalachians. And look at this wet weather pattern for parts of the central and southern Corn Belt. A little snow up to the north with no Arctic air in sight, but again some moisture for some of these worst drought areas of the Corn Belt too. Yeah, I know it's still winter time. Quiet and high pressure across the southeastern part of the country. Boy, assessment of some of those citrus areas across a wide area of Florida coming off the record-setting lows over the past week to 10 days. Shower activity across the southern plains and of the southeastern states as high pressure and sunshine into position there. Cool temperatures still for the time of year down through Florida. Snow melt will continue to wind its way through the mid-Atlantic region, the central and southern Appalachian Trail. Later in the week, expectations and some rain into the Tennessee Valley. We'll have the long-range forecast coming up in just a bit.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. NCBA's CattleCon is more than just a speaker series and a trade show. There's also an opportunity to see actual livestock demonstrations. Dr. Ron Gill from Texas A&M University and lifetime rancher Kurt Pate led a series of trainings with the group to better educate them on stockmanship. I had the chance to ask Kurt Pate why stockmanship was something he found to be so important for the industry.
It's been around since biblical times. I mean, we've been handling sheep, cattle, goats, horses, donkeys, and so it's a skill that has been essential for a long time. You'd think we'd be better at it by now, but it's ever changing. The more technology we get and the more machines we use, the less skills we have at the age-old tradition of stockmanship, which is kind of an art and a skill. So I think it's important for people to be able to, that spend a lot of time with stockmanship or working animals, to be able to convey that to people that don't have the time. So my job is to break things down in a simpler form and then put them back together so people can understand them and save some time, be safer and more productive with their production.
So in Nashville this week, what were some of the techniques or the issues that you were helping producers think through?
Well, I don't know if there's issues. I mean, we all have skill levels, and some of us are very high-level skills, and some people, whether they be coming in just first-timers, or some people that have been doing it all their life have less skill than some people that are just starting because they had bad habits. So what we're trying to do is break things down to their simplest form, present them in a way that people can say, I get that. That's why my grandpa did that, or that's why my grandma did that. and then put them back together so it'll flow out when they get home.
Kurt, I can tell this is an issue you are passionate about. You've been training producers on stockmanship for a number of years. Talk to us a little bit about your history. How did you get into this? How did this become sort of a calling for you?
So I've always had a compassion for animals, and a lot of cowboys aren't supposed to be, but most cowboys are, but they don't like to show it. And so you got this feeling, and I actually I rodeoed a lot. And what I see a lot of rough stock riders, bareback riders and bronc riders, really have a respect and a compassion for the horse because of the death you're putting yourself to and the skills you have to have and the power that they have. So I think a lot of rodeo guys have this compassion and they want to learn more about the animals. And so that's where it all started. And then I got to training horses and starting colts. And that's a spot where, and I really got around some people that tried to do it in a way where they work with the animal rather than fight the animal. And then I thought, well, that's working for my horse deal. What about my cow deal? That should just, so most of the things I learned about really being good with a colt to get them started changed from an animal that's never been touched to one that you can ride and rope on and do things. I thought I can use those same principles with a cow. And the passion is there. So when you can change an animal's perspective and make him a more productive animal in the food system or a horse to production, then that's a great feeling for me.
It is, and I hear all the time from folks who work cattle for a living that calm cattle pay better. They say that there's a return for proper stockmanship. Is that something you found?
So my saying is gentle cattle get fat, and they rebreed. And so, but the other problem is gentle cattle get dull, so they can get very hard to work. So sometimes when animals get real gentle, they're dull. So the real goal is to have, whether we a horse or a cow, have them gentle and be able to go from excited to relax. That's what we're training them. But then actually move away from pressure so they don't have the stress and we don't have the stress of moving them. So it's very important to get cattle where they trust you and they can bring their heart rate down. I just learned about this the other day. Horses and cows, being a herd animal, a herd matches heart rates. So when you have a herd of cattle grazing, if they're all excited and stirred up, their heart rate's up, they can't put their head down to graze. So this is scientific proof of why gentle cattle do perform better. Their heart rate slows, they can put their head down, they can graze, they can ruminate after they graze. And so it's our job, and I wonder if they don't match our heart rate sometimes. So being a good stockman is a lot about, the first thing is controlling your emotions and getting your pulse or your heart rate down or up or whatever you need it to be.
Kurt, of course, you'll be doing trainings like this across the country as a part of NCBA. Are you looking forward to working with more producers here in this exciting cattle market of 2026?
You know, this is our 22nd year at CattleCon doing cattle handling demonstrations. And I can't believe how much people have changed and how more accepting they are of these things. And the young people coming in, they know nothing different. And so it's so much fun to go out there and be able to present ideas and say, yeah, we get it. And then really wanting to go home. Where before we had to kind of change our mind and prove to them. Now the proof's in the pudding. Now we just throw ideas out there. And it's the greatest job in the world.
And of course, beef quality assurance is what a lot of producers are aiming for, get their certification. Is that a program that you've enjoyed working with in years past?
Well, stockmanship, beef quality assurance started out injection site. That's where it all started. And now there's so many things, but stockmanship's such a big part of it. And the fun thing, if we have time, is so the big problem with when we started beef quality assurance is taking the injection site from the hindquarters to the neck. And that's one of my training points is if you'll take your pressure, most people push from the back. If you'll just move your pressure 4 feet ahead where you give an injection in the neck, if you'll start pushing a cow from there, now your animal will work completely different. So BQA has really helped my stockmanship.
Thanks to Kurt Pate for filling us in on his livestock demonstration classes. And if you are interested in getting BQA certified, we'll put Husker Harvest Days on your schedule for September. NCBA will bring that class to that event, and we'll have more with Matt Youngman later in the program.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Pioneer. 100 starts with 1.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. We like to check in with our friends from Nutrien Ag Solutions as part of our Agronomy for Your Acres segment, seeing what's happening on farms across the country. And this week, we're joined by Jacob Sosby. He's a branch manager for Nutrien Ag Solutions in Santa Rosa, Texas. Jacob, thanks for joining us this week.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, this is the first time we've had you on Agronomy for Your Acres. Tell us a little bit about your position and what you do with Nutrien Ag Solutions.
Absolutely. I'm a location branch manager. I've worked for Nutrien Ag Solutions for 13 years in agronomy, and my primary role is to work with our South Texas farmers and become a valuable part of their system and extract value, help them solve their problems, and keep this vital farm economy in South Texas profitable, rolling, and highly efficient.
Now, you mentioned South Texas, and it looks a little sunny in the background there. Tell us a little bit more about your geography. Jacob, what do you see in your neck of the woods?
Absolutely. So we are on the border of southern Texas. So I think this is unofficial, but I think we're the most southern Nutrien Ag Solutions branch in the nation. And so it puts us in a completely different crop system. We have over 30 different commodities that we grow, citrus. I'm standing in front of some cabbage and onions behind me. We've got our traditional row crops, cotton, corn, sorghum, but everything else in between. So it keeps us busy year round, and we can almost farm, 11 months out of the year.
You put things into perspective for us, Jacob. For us up north, our planters are in the shed for a little while longer. For your corn growers down there, when will they start to roll?
We've got corn out of the ground right now. So they try to plant it early, but normally we can get by without a freeze or a frost, and we will plant late January, early February for corn.
All right, so the growing season is off and running in South Texas. Tell us a little bit what you're hearing from your growers about challenges or opportunities as they look out to 2026. What's on their mind?
Yeah, I don't think any farmer is going to look at 2026 and not have a list of challenges that's going to be in front of them. So cash flow is really front of mind. Trying to create a farming system that gives them the units and the care that they need for their crop, but also keeping cost in mind. And so we're having daily conversations on how we can increase efficiencies with NP and K, choosing the right varieties to make sure that we are getting our cost and value in an appropriate spot. I've worked for a long time with Nutrien, but this season seems to be one where we are intimately connected with our growers and their decisions.
Now, is there anything in the Nutrien toolbox that can help growers get that better value for their spend as you look out to 2026? What suggestions are you offering?
Absolutely. I would like to, because my agronomy background, like to say it would be something out in the field, which there's plenty of options, but the one that's going to stand out the most is Nutrien Finance. Any opportunity that we have to go in and have 0% financing from some of these third-party solutions is a really unique tool that our growers have with us at Nutrien. And that seems to be the one that most of our growers are chasing right now.
Now, if we've got folks who want to learn more about the different offerings from Nutrien Ag Solutions, where would you send them?
I would encourage them to find their local branch. I'm a people person. Go walk in the front door, shake a hand, but I understand that sometimes that's not so feasible. So I would say do the easy thing, hop on the internet, look at our website, but start making some phone calls and see why Nutrien is such a great business to work with. It's because of the people.
Jacob Sosby, branch manager with Nutrien Ag Solutions in Santa Rosa, Texas. Thank you so much for taking the time to fill us in on agriculture in your neck of the woods. We appreciate the discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And folks, if you want to visit that website, you can at nutrienagsolutions.com.
Agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier returns now with his extended farm weather forecast for the country.
Earlier in the program, Greg outlined the weather risk for next week. And Greg, it sounds like there's some moisture in the forecast. Who's going to see the bulk of it?
Well, Mike, just in the nick of time, milder days, warmer days if you're going to head down to Louisville for the National Farm Equipment Show, and probably with time, bring along the wet weather gear, rain as opposed to ice and snow, but still some of these areas into the Tennessee Valley, Northern Delta, still trying to get the power up and going. I'm sure there's still some stories regarding livestock and poultry operations, but as the week wears on, pretty good plume of moisture up to an inch, plus the snow melt, so some areas of drought relief. Look at it that way into the southeastern states, mid-Atlantic region. Some drought relief too over the eastern and southern Corn Belt, the snow line meandering its way into the southern plain states. Look at the moisture as the week wears on across the western states and up towards the Canadian border, with the most likelihood of any significant snows playing out there for the coming week. So kind of a win-win really for everyone. No major storms, but some moisture certainly in the forecast. Taking a look as we move on through the mid to late stretches of the month of February, still have this cold air source up towards the Sioux into the northeast of New England. The warmth returns across parts of the plain states and southwestern sections of the country. A little buckle in the jet stream pattern across the Pacific Northwest as well. So a little more optimism. It's late in the season, but we'll take anything we can get with snow in mind across the Sierra into the Rockies. Weather systems drop to the south and southeast. So in this area, probably some winter storminess, back to dry time over the southeastern reaches of the country. As we get ready to roll into meteorological springtime as of March 1st, not much of it here. Look at the cold air building southward out of the Canadian Prairie to the Ohio Valley and points out of the east. The warm ridge retrogrades across the western reaches of the country. This compaction of temperatures typically means you're back into a busier weather cycle. We'll see that into the northern Rockies, Pacific Northwest, back to dry time, moisture shortages over the southwest, active weather pattern for the northern and eastern Corn Belt into the northeast and New England. Getting into the deeper stretch of March, the first full week. Look at the cold air laying out across the northern reaches of the country. Springtime suppressed down to the south here, and the jet stream pattern buckled across the middle part of the country. And typically that means a pretty busy weather pattern. It'll be just that with systems out of the Pacific Northwest. Late season snows will take them into the northern parts of the plains. Heads up, livestock managers. Look at the plume of moisture too, with winter storminess for the Corn Belt, the Northeast, and New England.
Our Farm Progress Update is brought to you by Grinnell Mutual. Farming is complicated. Our comprehensive policies make it simpler. Protect your tomorrow from the unexpected with Grinnell Mutual. While we were on the trade show floor at the NCBA's Cattle Con, we bumped into National Events Director for Farm Progress, Matt Youngman. I had the chance to ask him what he was doing on site.
We're here at NCBA, a lot of great conversations going on about the beef industry, and Husker Harvest Days is obviously a wonderful beef event, great for any size producer of beef cattle. And, looking forward to setting that up. A lot of great conversations. Want everybody to mark their calendars for September 15th, 16th, and 17th, middle of September there, just west of Grand Island, Nebraska.
Now, of course, this year there are a lot of new things coming. The excitement in the cattle sector is palpable. We're seeing it everywhere. That excitement is coming to Grand Island. Let's talk about some livestock demonstrations. Matt, what's on display this year?
Well, for probably over 30 years now, there have been cattle handling demonstrations at Husker Harvest Days. Some of the best in the world, I think, with more shoots than anybody else. But we're really leaning into more demonstrations for the beef producers. We're going to add a TMR demonstration. So if you're in the market for a feed mixer, you're going to be able to actually come and watch them operate and compare them side by side, similar to what we do with our harvest demonstrations or tillage demonstrations. Also going to do a lot of stuff with cornstalk bale and bale processors, and a lot of demonstrations, kind of a dedicated area for folks that create and make feed for cattle, and an opportunity to learn about those tools.
So that'll be one thing. That is definitely worth seeing. We're going to see those cattle handling demonstrations, but also beef quality assurance certification. Matt, that will be available this year?
Yeah, really excited to partner with the folks from NCBA to bring that, a nice opportunity for some touch-up education, get your certifications, and kind of a one-stop shop for a beef producer to come on those 3 days of the show.
That's fantastic. Now, remind us one more time, what are the 3 dates?
Yeah, so September 15th, 16th, and 17th, we're just west of Grand Island, Nebraska, and would invite any of the beef producers to come and check out that show.
Now, over the past couple of years, we've seen some big improvements to both the showgrounds and the logistics in arriving at the showgrounds. Anything to have on our radar for this year?
Well, they've just redone a lot of the roads in Grand Island that lead out to Husker Harvest Days, and so all that construction is done. Everything is up and running, so the traffic in and out will be nice and smooth and safe, and so looking forward to it. The facility had a big upgrade in 2018, so it's a great place to have the show. So looking forward to having everybody there.
For folks who want to get some early planning done, they want to start marking the website, Matt, where would you send them for tickets and information as they become available?
Yeah, all that information will be loaded here through the spring and summer leading up to the show at huskerharvestdays.com. Free admission, free registration, and just check everything out there.
Thanks to Matt Youngman, National Events Director at Farm Progress. Folks, we look forward to seeing you at Husker Harvest Days in September.
Now on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. A family in Iowa has 90 years of experience with Minneapolis Moline tractors, including the one I'll share with you this weekend in Max's Tractor Shed. Brought to you by Ag Spray Equipment, a leader in liquid application equipment and parts, and the home of the DT Series trailer. From turnkey solutions to field-proven performance, they help maximize your spraying operation. Learn more at agspray.com. Well, the Minneapolis Moline Model UB back in the day had a great reputation as a belt pulley tractor. They said you could hook that up to run a buzz saw or maybe shell corn, and it would maintain those RPMs and not overheat. You could run it all day. I'm going to show you one, made in 1954. This was one of several Minneapolis Molines owned by the Cleveland family at Williams, Iowa. About an hour north of Des Moines, a little bit north of US 20 there. Eric and Mary Cleveland many years ago bought this tractor, and now, after their passing, their offspring, Linda, Eric Jr., Martin, and Jim, continue proud ownership of that Model UB. I was visiting with son Martin the other evening, and he said he very well remembers hauling corn from the field to the crib on those harvest moon evenings with those lights up there by the grill cutting a beam in front of that 1954 Model UB, owned by the Cleveland family in Iowa. Here's Mark Stocknow with a weekly report from Big Iron Auctions.
Well, hello, Max. We've got a big week of auctions, February the 10th. The Jim Harpstrite Retirement Sale, 2018 Case IH 7240, John Deere 9530 four-wheel drive tractor, John Deere 8210 mechanical front tractor, and many more items. Also on Tuesday, February the 10th, the Greenview Farms Retirement Sale. Kevin and Lori Green are retiring 3 2025 John Deere S7 800 Series Combines, 2024 John Deere 9R 440 four-wheel drive tractor, 3 2024 John Deere 8R 370 mechanical front tractors, 2 John Deere 6R 145 mechanical front tractors with loaders. On Wednesday, February the 11th, the Steve Hostreiter Estate Sale, Humphrey, Nebraska, selling a 2022 year model John Deere 1795 Maximerge 24-row 20-inch planter, John Deere 8360R mechanical front tractor, John Deere 8520 mechanical front tractor. And on Thursday, February the 12th, Kenton Brown will sell a Case IH 5088 Combine, a Case IH MX 240 mechanical front tractor, Case IH Magnum 305 mechanical front tractor. All of these sellers will sell a full line of quality farm machinery this week. We look forward to seeing everyone in Louisville, Kentucky at the National Farm Machinery Show. Thanks, Max.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Geringoff. Check out the new XFR 50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than its closest competitor at Geringoff.com. Geringoff, proudly built in the American heartland. This week, we're getting to know Skylar Plucker. Skylar serves as the state sentinel this year for the South Dakota State FFA. And Skylar, I understand you grew up in agriculture. Can you tell us a little bit about the family farm?
Yes, I can. So my dad, he grew up around the dairy cattle, and he wanted to start his own dairy. So he went out and wanted to find the new way to produce dairy. So he went out and bought a robotic milker. And that's what I grew up around initially, was the robotic milker. But when milk prices dropped, we kind of had to sell most of our cows. We sold the robotic milker, and we kept the show cattle around. And I grew up with about 20 purebred Guernsey cows, and that's kind of my background in agriculture and the dairy industry.
It was enough to develop a love for the dairy industry. And of course, now you're serving in FFA. And what have been some of the highlights of your years in service with FFA?
I think some of my highlights, especially this year, being a state officer, is going around and meeting all the new members and meeting members who are so passionate about what they're doing, whether it's their SAE supervised agriculture experience, where they get to go to work and work on some operation, or they go back to their home farm, or it's how much desire and passion they have for the competition sides, the LDEs, leadership development events, or CDEs, and how much, or career development events, and how much they really care about what they're doing in FFA.
You can tell there is a passion that exists throughout the FFA membership. Skylar, you get to work with them all year. We certainly wish you the best of luck as you continue your year of service, and then look ahead to what comes next, and hopefully you can make it back to that dairy and keep raising those cows. Thanks for joining us this week, Skylar.
Thank you.
Chad Colby's Tech segment is brought to you by AGI, supporting your expertise with industry-leading grain handling, storage, conditioning, and monitoring solutions. AGI, we're right there with you. Winter is meeting season, and next week has two great opportunities for farmers to get out and see what's new in the industry. Chad Colby has the update.
Next week, there's two really big shows. In fact, they're some of the biggest in the world. The first is in Tulare, California, at the World Ag Expo. This show's been going on since the late 60s. I've attended the show a couple times, and it is truly an amazing show. The interesting part of that show is it takes a unique twist because of all the specialty crops in the San Joaquin Valley, like this tree shaker you see right here. That's something we don't have in central Illinois, that's for sure. It's a great show. The other big show right around the corner is the National Farm Machinery Show that takes place next week, also in Louisville, Kentucky. And can you believe this? They're going to celebrate their 60th year. Of course, there's tractor pulls. That's always a big draw every night. But the crowds come to see all the technology. One of the things I've always enjoyed about that show, especially in this time frame of the year, is these shows give you a chance to see some new technology, and then maybe when you get home, you make a few more phone calls and learn a little bit more about it, like AGI's electronic system and monitoring in grain bins. I got a chance to see it for the first time last summer, and it's pretty impressive what this technology can do, and these shows give you a chance to do that. All of the majors are going to have their announcements here over the next month, whether that's in Tulare or in Louisville or even at the Commodity Classic later in the month. You can expect to see some new announcements. I know from all the manufacturers, they use this time frame as a showcase for launching new equipment. And you know what? If you're on social media at all, you've noticed a lot of teasers right now. In fact, Fendt has already said what they're bringing to the National Farm Machinery Show. They've got a new tractor on display, and other manufacturers are putting a teaser out that there's more coming, and none of us really know what that is. John Deere being one of them. They certainly have something going up in their tractor lineup that I'm actually looking forward to see that as well. Whether we'll see that in commodity or we'll see it in Louisville, we'll see. But you know what? The nice part about these shows is it's kind of the precursor right before spring as well. It kind of gears you up to say, hey, listen, right around the corner is spring. And guess what? Some of this new technology is something to think about. Don't forget the Commodity Classic will be later this month in San Antonio, Texas. That is a big favorite as well. You can see our team for This Week in Agribusiness. We'll be in the Case IH booth next week. I'll be there with Mike, Max, and the guys, and I'm looking forward to it. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thanks, Chad. And folks, that's right. Come on by the Case IH booth if you're in Louisville for the National Farm Machinery Show Wednesday at 10 a.m. for a taping of This Week in Agribusiness. Last week, we spoke with Dave Weber, Senior Protein Analyst at Terrain, for our market segment, but we didn't yet have the data from the annual cattle inventory report. Those numbers came out last Friday, and we saw Dave on the trade show floor, and I asked him what those numbers meant as we look ahead to 26.
Well, they were smaller. I think smaller versus everybody's expectations. I'm not alone in thinking we were starting maybe some transition towards expansion, but cow herd smaller. Smallest cow herd in inventory we've had since 1941. I think that's what, a 74-year gap, 75 years, somewhere in there. Yeah, big declines.
And now when we spoke on the show, you said there was a possibility that USDA might raise January 2025's numbers, but did that end up happening?
It did not. They made some slight revisions, but nothing really big enough to make a lot of difference versus expectations.
So the headline was we had a smaller cow herd than we thought last year, and then it shrank all year. Am I understanding that right?
Exactly right, and then not much retention on the heifer side. If we look at beef replacement heifers up just 1%, but the split between expected to calve this year and the heifer calves that we're going to breed this year, about 50-50. That's not a trend of an expanding cow herd. That's like treading water.
So now you've had the chance to talk to producers here at CattleCon in Nashville. Have you heard anybody talking about growing their herd, or do you think those USDA figures are pretty accurate representations?
I think they're fair representation. We just completed in December and early January a survey of farm credit customers, covered 28 states, 10 different farm credit associations, had about 1,050 responses, and it showed about what our forecast was, and using the other empirical data that we had, maybe 1%, 1.5%, 2% growth. Kind of what they're doing. We've seen some herds, kind of the middle size groups, starting to do some work. But the real telling story is that 70% of them chose to use cows instead of heifers. So they reached out and they said, I want revenue this year on this expense. I don't want to add 2 years of growth and time and money to a heifer waiting for the cycle. I want to capture those record prices now. And so we saw those guys reach out and buy those cows. The trouble with the inventory report is all those cows got was a new mailing address. They're not new cows, right? They're already in the inventory.
That's true. And you mentioned that has supported these high prices for the cattlemen. Of course, that has carried through onto retailer and consumers. Dave, are they still willing to write these checks for beef at the grocery store?
It's a great news story in the beef demand segment. We just got done putting the November data together. We're waiting on the trade data from USDA. Record beef demand in November. Our expectation is we're going to have a record year in 2025 on per capita beef spending, either on a real deflated basis or on a nominal today's dollar basis, record large on both counts. Great story for beef producers, showing the value of the product that they sell, the progress we've made in eating quality over the last 30 years, and it's a great story for the industry.
That's one upbeat outlook for the beef industry looking ahead. Thanks to Dave Weber of Terrain for that analysis. And folks, thank you for joining us today. Be sure to catch us next time, right here for This Week in Agribusiness. Have a great week, everybody. This Week in Agribusiness is recorded in the Strauss Studio. Family owned since 1948 and trusted by pros worldwide, Strauss makes gear that works as hard as you do. Tough, functional, and resilient. This isn't just workwear, it's gear engineered to perform. Gear up now at Strauss.com.
This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.